Andy Griffith broke his silence before his death in 2012, and what he revealed will shatter everything you believed about Mayberry. For 8 seasons, the Andy Griffith Show became America's definition of wholesome small-town life. But behind that perfect image, there were vicious betrayals and destroyed friendships and secrets that CBS buried for over 50 years. Andy spoke candidly in his final interviews, and what he admitted is devastating. The real reason Don Knotts left the show and why Andy never forgave himself. How he got his own father figure fired from the show. The co-star he refused to speak to for decades. Why he called the show's success his greatest regret. And the dark truth about Mayberry that nobody wanted to admit. This is not another nostalgic look at classic television. These are confessions from Andy Griffith himself exposing what it really cost to create America's most beloved sitcom. If you think Mayberry was a happy place, you are about to discover the disturbing truth that Andy took to his grave. Before we dive into video, please subscribe to our channel. Andy Griffith never wanted to do a television series. In 1960, he was a successful stage actor and comedian who had just starred in a Broadway hit. He wanted to focus on serious dramatic roles and maybe transition into films. But his agent convinced him to meet with Sheldon Leonard, who was developing a new sitcom for CBS. Andy agreed to one meeting just to be polite. What happened in that meeting changed his life, but not in the way anyone expected. Sheldon pitched Andy the idea of playing a small-town sheriff who solved problems with wisdom instead of violence. Andy thought it sounded boring. He told Sheldon that Americans did not want to watch a show about a sleepy town where nothing happened. Sheldon disagreed. He said people were tired of crime shows and westerns. They wanted something gentle and comforting. Andy was not convinced, but Sheldon offered him an enormous amount of money and creative control. Andy admitted years later that he only said yes because of the paycheck. He needed financial security, and this seemed like easy work that would last maybe 1 season. The pilot episode was filmed in early 1960, and Andy hated it. He thought his performance was stiff and the writing was too sweet. Andy told the producers he wanted to quit before the show even aired. They begged him to give it a chance. CBS had already committed to a full season, and backing out would destroy his reputation in Hollywood. Andy reluctantly agreed, but he admitted he spent the entire first season waiting for the show to fail so he could move on with his life. What shocked Andy was that audiences loved it. The Andy Griffith Show became a massive hit almost immediately. Critics praised it, and families across America tuned in every week. Andy could not understand why. He thought the show was simple and unremarkable, but viewers saw something Andy did not see. They saw an escape from the chaos of the real world. Mayberry represented a place where life was simple, and people were kind, and problems were solved with common sense. Andy admitted he found that depressing. He knew Mayberry was not real, and he resented being the face of a fantasy. What fans never figured out is that Andy Griffith despised being Sheriff Andy Taylor. The character was patient and wise and always did the right thing. Andy was none of those things in real life. He was moody and short-tempered and deeply insecure. Playing Andy Taylor felt like wearing a mask that he could never take off. Andy revealed that he would come home from filming and feel completely drained. He had spent all day pretending to be a better version of himself, and it was exhausting. His first wife, Barbara, told him he was becoming 2 different people. There was Andy Griffith, the television star, and Andy the real man. She said she did not recognize him anymore. Andy admitted she was right. The show was consuming his identity, and he did not know how to stop it. The relationship between Andy Griffith and Don Knotts is legendary. Barney Fife became one of the most beloved characters in television history, and fans assumed Andy and Don were best friends in real life. But Andy revealed the truth in his final years, and it is heartbreaking. Andy and Don were friends before the show started. They had worked together on other projects, and Andy trusted Don completely. When Andy was developing the Andy Griffith Show, he insisted that Don be cast as the deputy. Andy said Don was the funniest person he had ever met, and he knew Don would make the show special. What Andy did not expect was that Don would steal the show. Barney Fife was supposed to be a minor character, but audiences fell in love with him. Don won 5 Emmy Awards for playing Barney. Andy never won one. Andy admitted he became jealous of Don's success. Every week, critics would praise Don's performance and barely mention Andy. Fans would stop Andy on the street and ask where Barney was. Andy said it felt like he was a supporting character on his own show. The jealousy created tension between Andy and Don that most people never saw. Andy revealed there were days when he would barely speak to Don on set. If Don improvised a joke that got a big laugh, Andy would feel resentful instead of happy. Andy knew those feelings were petty and wrong, but he could not control them. What made it worse was that Don had no idea Andy felt that way. Don thought they were best friends and collaborators. He trusted Andy completely. Andy said that trust made his jealousy even more shameful. In 1965, Don Knotts decided to leave the Andy Griffith Show. Don had been told by the producers that the show was ending after 5 seasons, so he signed a movie contract. But the producers lied. They renewed the show and never told Don until it was too late. Don was devastated. He loved playing Barney, and he did not want to leave. Don begged Andy to intervene and convince CBS to let him out of his movie contract. Andy had the power to make that happen, but he refused. Andy admitted he saw Don's departure as an opportunity to reclaim his show. Without Barney around, Andy would finally be the star again. Don left the show feeling betrayed and confused. He did not understand why Andy would not help him. Their friendship was never the same after that. Don would return for guest appearances, but the warmth between them was gone. Andy revealed that decision haunted him for the rest of his life. He had sacrificed his best friend because of ego and insecurity. Andy said if he could change one thing about his career, it would be that moment. He should have fought for Don and put their friendship above his own selfish feelings. But he did not, and he carried that guilt to his grave. After Don left the show, Andy realized he had made a terrible mistake. The show was not better without Barney. It was worse. The ratings stayed strong, but the magic was gone. Andy tried to replace Don with other comic actors, but none of them worked. Andy admitted the final 3 seasons felt hollow and joyless. He was going through the motions and collecting a paycheck, but his heart was not in it anymore. One of the most shocking revelations Andy Griffith made involves Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee. On screen, Aunt Bee was the warm, loving heart of the show. Off-screen, Frances was difficult and bitter, and Andy said working with her was miserable. Andy revealed that Frances hated doing the show from the very beginning. She was a classically trained stage actress who felt that television was beneath her. Frances believed she was destined for serious dramatic roles, and playing a small-town aunt felt like a waste of her talent. Andy said Frances complained constantly. She criticized the scripts and the directors and the other actors. She made it clear that she resented being there. Andy tried to be patient with Frances, but her negativity poisoned the set. The breaking point came during season 3. Frances and Andy had a scene where Aunt Bee was supposed to scold Andy for something. Frances decided to improvise and added lines that were harsher than what was written. Andy felt like Frances was using the scene to express her real feelings about him. After filming, Andy confronted Frances and told her she was being unprofessional. Frances exploded. She told Andy he was a mediocre actor who got lucky and that the show was cheap garbage. Andy said he had never been spoken to like that in his life. From that point on, Andy and Frances barely spoke unless cameras were rolling. They would film their scenes and then ignore each other completely. The rest of the cast and crew walked on eggshells, trying not to upset Frances. Andy revealed that he tried to get Frances fired multiple times, but CBS refused. Aunt Bee was too popular with audiences, and the network would not risk losing her. So Andy was stuck working with someone who despised him and the show. What made it worse was that fans believed Andy and Frances were like family in real life. They had no idea that the two actors could not stand each other. When the show ended in 1968, Frances moved to a small town in North Carolina and cut off contact with almost everyone from the show. Andy tried to reach out to her several times, but Frances never responded. Andy admitted he wanted to make peace with her before she died, but she refused to see him. Frances Bavier died in 1989, and Andy said her bitterness and loneliness broke his heart. He wished things had been different, but the damage was too deep to repair. Andy Griffith also revealed the devastating truth about his relationship with his own family and how the show destroyed it. Andy was married 3 times, and his first 2 marriages failed largely because of the show. His first wife, Barbara, told him he cared more about being Andy Taylor than being a husband and father. Andy admitted she was absolutely right. He was so consumed with the show and maintaining his image that he neglected his wife and children. Andy had 2 children from his first marriage, and he said he was a terrible father to them. He missed birthdays and school events and family vacations because he was always working. His son Andy Jr. struggled with alcoholism and depression. His daughter Dixie felt abandoned and angry. Andy said both his children told him they grew up feeling like they did not have a real father. They had Andy Griffith, the television star, but they did not have a dad who was present and loving. Andy said hearing that destroyed him. But by the time his children told him the truth, it was too late to fix. Andy also revealed that the pressure of maintaining the wholesome image nearly broke him. The public expected Andy Griffith to be just like Sheriff Andy Taylor. They wanted him to be patient and wise and morally perfect. But Andy was a flawed human being who made mistakes and had bad days. Andy said he felt like he was living in a prison of expectations. If he got angry in public or said something controversial, people were shocked and disappointed. Andy revealed that he started drinking heavily during the show's run to cope with the pressure. He would drink alone at night to numb the stress and the guilt. His second wife knew about the drinking, but she did not know how to help him. Andy said he was spiraling and he did not care. He had created this perfect image of small-town wholesomeness, and it was suffocating him. Andy admitted he had moments where he fantasized about destroying his own career just to escape the pressure. He wanted to do something so shocking that people would stop seeing him as Andy Taylor and start seeing him as a real complicated person. One of the most painful secrets Griffith revealed was about the racism embedded in the Andy Griffith Show. Mayberry was portrayed as an idyllic, small town, but it was almost entirely white. Andy admitted that was a deliberate choice by the network and the producers. CBS was terrified of alienating Southern viewers, so they made sure Mayberry reflected the segregated reality of the 1960s South. Andy said he pushed back against that policy multiple times. He wanted to cast black actors in meaningful roles, but the network refused. They told Andy that Mayberry needed to feel safe and familiar to white audiences. Andy said that excuse made him sick, but he did not fight hard enough. He went along with it because he did not want to jeopardize the show's success. Andy revealed there was one episode where he insisted on casting a black actor as a teacher. The network agreed, but only if the character had minimal screen time and no controversial dialogue. Andy said that compromise felt like a betrayal of his own values. He had the power to demand better representation, but he chose comfort and ratings instead. Looking back, Andy said the whiteness of Mayberry was one of his biggest regrets. He helped create a fantasy world that excluded people of color and reinforced the idea that small-town America was white America. Andy said he received letters from black viewers over the years, asking why they never saw themselves in Mayberry. Those letters haunted him. Andy admitted he had no good answer. He had been complicit in a system that valued white comfort over racial justice. Andy said if he could remake the Andy Griffith Show today, it would look completely different. Mayberry would be diverse and inclusive. The stories would address real issues instead of hiding from them. But Andy knew he could not change the past. All he could do was admit his failure and hope younger creators would do better. Andy Griffith also revealed the financial reality of the show and how it created resentment and bitterness. Andy was the star and executive producer, so he made significantly more money than anyone else. But Andy admitted the pay disparity created tension with the cast. Actors like Don Knotts and Francis Bavier were essential to the show's success, but they were paid a fraction of what Andy earned. Andy said he knew that was unfair, but he did not share his profits. He justified it by saying he carried the creative and financial risk. But deep down, Andy knew he was being greedy. What made it worse was that Andy owned a percentage of the show, which meant he continued making money from syndication for decades. Meanwhile, actors like Don struggled financially in their later years. Andy revealed that Don Knotts had to keep working into his 70s because he needed the money. Andy could have helped him financially, but he did not. Andy said that failure to support his friend was another regret he carried. The end of the Andy Griffith Show in 1968 was not Andy's decision. CBS wanted to continue for more seasons, but Andy demanded the show end. He told the network he was exhausted and creatively drained. Andy admitted the real reason was that he could not stand being Andy Taylor anymore. He felt like the character had consumed his entire identity, and if he did not walk away, he would lose himself completely. CBS tried to convince Andy to stay by offering more money and more creative control, but Andy refused. He said no amount of money was worth sacrificing what was left of his soul. When the final episode aired, Andy felt relieved. He thought he could finally move on and become a different kind of actor. But Andy quickly discovered that nobody wanted him to be anyone other than Andy Taylor. He auditioned for dramatic roles and was rejected over and over. Directors told him audiences would never accept him as anything but the friendly sheriff. Andy was typecast and trapped by his own success. In the 1970s, Andy tried to distance himself from the Andy Griffith Show by doing edgier projects. He played villains and complicated characters that were nothing like Andy Taylor. But audiences rejected those performances. They wanted the Andy they knew and loved. Andy said that rejection was devastating. He had spent 8 years creating a character that brought joy to millions, but that character had destroyed his ability to do anything else. Andy revealed he went through a deep depression during that period. He felt like a failure, despite having one of the most successful shows in television history. Andy also admitted he resented the fans. He knew that was unfair because they loved the show genuinely. But Andy could not help feeling angry that people refused to see him as more than Andy Taylor. He wanted to scream at them that Mayberry was not real and he was not that character. But he stayed silent because speaking the truth would destroy the illusion that so many people needed. In the 1980s, Andy returned to television with Matlock, which became another huge success. Playing a lawyer allowed Andy to use some of the warmth of Andy Taylor, while also showing more edge and complexity. Andy said Matlock saved his career and gave him financial security in his later years. But even Matlock could not erase the shadow of Mayberry. Fans still loved Andy Taylor more than any other character Andy ever played. Andy admitted that realization was both humbling and frustrating. He had worked for over 50 years as an actor, but he would always be defined by 8 years in a fictional small town. In his final interviews before his death in 2012, Andy reflected on his complicated legacy. He acknowledged that The Andy Griffith Show brought joy and comfort to generations of viewers. He understood that Mayberry represented something people desperately wanted to believe in. But Andy also wanted people to know the cost of creating that fantasy. Behind the smiling sheriff and the perfect town was a man who felt trapped and diminished by his own creation. Andy said he sacrificed his friendships and his family and his artistic integrity to maintain an image that was never real. He enabled racism by not fighting harder for inclusion. He destroyed his relationship with Don Knotts because of jealousy. He failed his children because he prioritized fame over fatherhood. Andy said those failures were not worth any amount of success. What Andy wanted people to understand is that The Andy Griffith Show was a beautiful lie. Mayberry never existed. Small towns in America were not idyllic havens free from conflict and prejudice. They were complicated places filled with flawed people just like everywhere else. But Americans needed to believe in Mayberry because reality was too hard. Andy said he understood that need, but he wished he had been brave enough to tell more honest stories. He wished he had used his platform to address real issues instead of escaping from them. But he chose safety and comfort and popularity. Instead, Andy Griffith died in 2012 at the age of 86. In his final days, Andy told his family he had lived a successful life, but not necessarily a good one. He said he had entertained millions, but he had hurt the people closest to him. He had created something beloved, but he had compromised his values to do it. Andy's final wish was that people would remember him as a flawed human being who tried his best and often failed. He did not want to be remembered as Saint Andy or the perfect embodiment of small-town values. He wanted to be remembered as real. What fans never figured out is that Andy Griffith spent 50 years running from Andy Taylor. The character brought him fame and wealth, but it also trapped him in an image he could never escape. Behind the whistling theme song and the fishing trips to the lake was a man who felt like a prisoner of his own success.